Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Ask Dr. Be Good show, the show where we bring you the practice, the pedagogy, and the politics behind public education. As you can see, I'm not in my studio. I had some studio glitches this week, so I'm at the lake, and I'm in the science room at the lake. And as you can see behind me, I've not only repurposed the room for science, but also for biology, since I have brought in the plants. And on top there, you see some science things that I always gather for my grandkids. And I always make the promise that I'm gonna make a video of that, of what I do to help keep science alive. I really should say bring science alive for the young ones, especially the young grandkids. And I encourage all of you to think in that way. When I go on science walks with our grandson, starting at 3 years of age, we were pointing out erosion and dead things and the way that squirrels gather their food source and where they go. We actually saw squirrels up in a tree, which is really rare to do. So I always enjoy being able to talk about this room, and I need to do it more thoroughly with y'all in the future. So, but for now, let's get started on the news and what's out there this week. Interestingly enough, some of you may have heard that Facebook changed their name to Meta. And part of why they did that was because they understood that most people thought of Facebook as a standalone entity. And actually, in fact, it's not. Facebook is one piece of several different products and services that the company now called Meta offers. And so let's go through. In this case, as Facebook changes name to Meta, company wants to pull education into its metaverse, get it instead of universe into its metaverse. And so let's talk about how Facebook is going to do that. So let's go backwards a little bit before we go forwards. And so Facebook changed its corporate name to Meta, and this is part of CEO Mark Zuckerberg's sweeping vision of creating next generation of embodied internet inspired by science fiction, where users, as he described it, will be in the experience, not just looking at it. And he is targeting education as one key part of that vision. What metaverse will look like is still a bit vague, but the company gave some hints in prepared statements and in an hour-long video. And I did watch that hour-long video. I took one for the team and made sure I watched it before the show today so that I could speak on it and be a little bit better versed on exactly what Zuckerberg was intending to do. So he has committed real dollars to the educational part of its effort, promising that its Facebook Reality Lab will invest $150 million in an education program to assist with the tech development and to train people to use augmented and virtual reality tools. So Meta announced that it would partner with Coursera and edX to help push Meta's curriculum in augmented and virtual reality, which it calls its Spark AR curriculum, AR being augmented reality. A spokesman for edX, which started as a nonprofit by Harvard and MIT, is in the process of being sold to for-profit 2U, said the group would share more information about the partnership in upcoming weeks. The choice to bet the future of Facebook on the word metaverse is an interesting one at a time when Facebook is under intense scrutiny, as we all know, for its growing power, its, the way that it controlled posts and negative posts. It gave more power to negative posts. Matter of fact, I posted on Saturday, I posted a picture and a piece of information from LinkedIn that showed that in 2018, Facebook had given more weight to negative emoticons instead of likes and love emoticons, so that it gave a distorted sense of power to the negative posts. They've stopped doing it supposedly, but think of how that might have influenced politics and just other social media topics by making the negative face emoticons more powerful and give them more weight than love and like emoticons. That's just wrong, right? So they've got a lot to answer for, and so I think they're trying to get some positive press here, positively. And so after recent leaks of internal documents that suggest the company has moved forward with features despite internal research showing social harm, it turns out that the term metaverse was coined in a dystopian novel that is highly critical of growing corporate control of society and of internet technologies, which is ironic, right? That book that spawned the term is the 1992 science fiction novel Snow Crash, an action adventure set in the world where much of everyday life is lived in an immersive digital world that eventually replaces the internet. In that novel, the metaverse has emerged after a worldwide economic collapse where governments have given up power to private companies and entrepreneurs, leading to a huge divide between the have and have-nots. Basically, it's as far from a sales pitch for a visual internet run by a giant company as you can get, though somehow over the years it's become a template for Silicon Valley for what a shared visual cyberspace might look like. Zuckerberg's interest in virtual reality is nothing new. In 2014, the company bought the VR company Oculus for $2 billion. And Zuckerberg says that the idea for the name change predates the recent criticism of the company. So the version of the metaverse imagined in the hour-long video that Meta released involves a mix of technology, including what appears to be holograms. And it's true, in watching that hour-long video, they showed little snippets of to sort of support the vision. It's not a completed technology. A lot of the tech is years away from really becoming truly being able to be used by the mainstream. But it was interesting. Just for example, they gave a girl in a science helping a girl getting help with her astrophysics homework by swiping her hands to manipulate a giant picture of the solar system right in front of her. And it's got Saturn right in front of her, and you see the rings and the different, some of you may remember the different rings are made up. Some are solid, some are chunky ice, and that's right in front of her. And of course, much more engaging, right? If you were taking astrophysics, you could study in the multiverse, said the narrator of this part of the video. But high-end VR headsets also seems part of the metaverse vision for education as well. And in the next example, it showed a boy who becomes an avatar, and that's a big part of supposedly our future is to all of us will have avatars that where we can go into the hologram and experience something. In this case, in the hour-long video, they had a student going in to ancient Rome, and he is able to see ancient Rome, and the daily life of people in Rome 1,000 years ago. And so that very engaging, I would hope, for kids to want to be able to do that versus, the next page in their textbook. Imagine standing in the streets, hearing the sounds, visiting the markets to get a sense of rhythm of the life of more than 2,000 years ago. Imagine learning how the forum was built by actually watching the forum get built right in front of you. Most of the graphics shown in this part of the video appear to be an artist rendering rather than any demo of actual technology, as the video showcases one possible future rather than any specific products. Now, one challenge for bringing this vision to life is that VR headsets have failed to take off widely. And I know my granddaughter has one, and I was not impressed by it. It was not anywhere near as engaging as that young man walking through ancient Rome. The company discontinued the Rift headsets this year after lackluster sales, although it now sells a VR headset called Oculus Quest 2 that they say is selling better. And part of why they don't sell very well is because they remain clunky and expensive. And it also is costly to develop the materials for them for education or any other purpose. And again, the headset that my granddaughter had was showing being on a roller coaster and different type of roller coasters. And it was cartoonish, and it did not thrill me in any way. And so with all the problems and challenges that educators are facing during a global pandemic, adding bells and whistles of more Hollywood-inspired course materials does not feel like the best way to spend time and resources to many educators. Earlier this year, Arizona State University touted a company it is backing to develop educational materials for VR headsets, and they took that to an ASU/GSV summit, and the demo attracted curious interest, but also many shrugs from officials that EdSurge talked to, who were more interested in the better use of existing tools than investing in expensive new gear. And I'm always that triggered something in me. Some of you may have heard me talk about the fact that one of the things wrong with public education is we have too many adults making decisions, not enough kids helping in those decisions. And so my wondering is it really proper to just shrug away from VR sets that has better animation, better curriculum in there, better content, without involving the kids to say, hey, kids, would this be something you would respond to in a more engaging way? Let's get the kids in on the decision making, right? And part of what the criticism is, and what people are saying about why Facebook is headed in this direction, is because they feel like Facebook is losing the younger kids to Snapshot and to other social platforms. The metaverse could help the company's demographic crisis if it encourages young people to strap on their Oculus headsets and hang out in the horizon. And that's the word that you'll have to look out for. The horizon is Facebook's social VR app instead of watching TikTok videos on their phones, right? So again, interesting possible future coming, getting the technology to where it's not only used in schools, but it also, in the 1-hour video that I watched, had applications for the workplace where you're still at home doing remote working, but the hologram has you set in what looks like your office at work. And you actually can interact with people in their homes, but it looks like they're at work. And the thought is, the psychology behind that, you, first of all, work better if you're in an office setting. Even though you're in your home, the hologram helps your brain feel like it's in a business setting, and you're actually interacting in a business way with your colleagues, but they're also at home. And then it showed the hologram of people coming together for a office meeting at a conference table, but everybody's still in their own home. It's all hologram people that are hologrammed in, and we're all talking together at the conference table while sitting in our own homes. So that's what our future might be, and that's what Zuckerberg is hoping to bring to the table. You know, they do have other products. Interestingly enough, one of the things I saw in the video was their partnership with Ray-Bans, the sunglasses, that they have now sunglasses that you can connect to your phone. So you answer the phone on your sunglasses and you're talking that way. And so they feel like that's a safer option than what many people do. They walk, or they're walking like this, right? They've got their face down and they walk into the street, they walk in front of a car, they walk into a lamppost and not be safe. So interesting technology. We'll see if it actually comes to something. Be on the lookout. And you heard it here first from many of you on the Ask Dr. Be Good show. Now, one of the things that you've not heard first, because I've been talking about it for a while, but gosh, folks, it's something we really need to pay attention to, and that is our constant teacher issue. Our teachers are walking out in droves. Many of them have already left or are planning on leaving by Christmas break, and so we're exploring here why is that? Let's continue to understand what's driving this problem so we can help our legislators solve it, right? Because that's our job, is to become an advocate for public education and to be in contact with our legislators and have them hear from us on an ongoing basis about our concern around not only not enough money, but now losing our teachers and what can be done about that. So here's an article that says, has the thrill gone out of teaching? States, especially in the South, feel dread over predicted staffing shortages. Now, this is from November 15th. So this is a recent article. A recent webinar explored troubling trends in teacher recruitment and retention, including chronic staff shortages in foreign languages, math, science, and special education. A fifth of teachers flee the classroom in their first 5 years of teaching. And we have recognized at Southern Regional Education Board that our states are screaming for help, and we have to address the teacher shortage and really elevate the teacher profession in each state. We see this as integrally a part of ensuring a viable economy in the South and throughout the country. So again, people are saying what I've been saying to you all for several years, and that is that we have got to get these kids taught correctly so that they can go on to go beyond minimum wage jobs, right? The shortage is pretty scary across the whole country, especially in certain pockets in certain areas, and it's growing, and it's been growing for the past decade. Said Megan Bourne, who works on teacher workforce issues within 16 states that belong to the Atlanta-based Southern Regional Education Board. So panelists suggest a slew of reasons why the profession is faltering, including a barrier to entry, little autonomy, limited career ladder, and low pay. Here's another possibility. The thrill is gone. For many, teaching has become a spirit-destroying grind with dwindling rewards and escalating demands. The expectations on teachers are unrealistic, unsustainable, and unreasonable. Over the last 3 decades, we've asked schools to be the antidote to every emerging social ill, from child obesity to drug addiction to online bullying. Along with teaching children to read, write, and do math, we expect schools to produce empathetic human beings, model citizens, and productive members of society, and also curtail teen pregnancies, provide up to 3 meals a day, and in the midst of COVID pandemic, address the surge in mental health disorders among America's children. So, and again, this is something we all need to be alert about and start reaching out to our legislators about, and making sure that they tell you that they're responding and are aware of this and are working towards a solution. For example, so here's a good example of what we've asked teachers to do. With the reopening of schools this year, it's been recommended that teachers conduct wellness checks with their students to see how they're faring. That sounds reasonable, right? Nothing elaborate, just short, hey, how are you kind of thing. And what happens is that short, 2-minute interaction is, seems to be a good thing to do. But folks, when you have 125 students, as many of our middle and high school students teachers have, allocating as little as 2.5 minutes a week to touch base with each student adds up to more than 5 hours a week. We already don't have enough time to teach what we need to teach, right? Those wellness checks are competing with the extra time needed to mediate the learning losses caused by the pandemic. And where do teachers turn when they spot worrisome signs in their students? Well, most high schools employ 1 counselor per 400 to 500 students, depending on the state. Even if parents can afford to pay private mental services for their kids, many metro therapists report they're booked and not taking new patients. Schools and teachers have found themselves used as political fodder, mask mandate, vaccine mandates, falsely accused of teaching critical race theory, a complex legal framework that normally is taught to 25-year-olds. In law school, politicians know CRT is not taught in K-12, but the issue packs school board meetings. So craven politicians are willing to condemn CRT and woke teachers for votes, making it harder for educators to talk to students about racism that they may be experiencing. So research suggests current recruitment lures, such as signing bonuses, won't be enough to keep teachers in classrooms. Bonuses are somewhat effective, but they're effective as a recruitment, but not as a retention strategy, because teachers want to be in a building with other teachers who want to be there, and they want to work with supportive leaders. So there's a whole rethink that they're saying it, and then you've heard me say this around what we do with pay and how we assign teachers. We have to lift up the profession, lift up the value, and not just attempt band-aids. Panelists said the teacher witnessed the denigration of their abilities, dedication, and professionalism in many recent policy debates, including during the pandemic, when some parents argued that they should have been forced to teach in person regardless of what science advised. All that noise undermines the desirability of the profession to those considering it and those already in it. Ultimately, we really have to look at elevating the profession. You know, I have a brother who's a lawyer in education. He is he's an education law lawyer. And I was asking him today on a call about what he's seeing in his side of the state. And he is just shaking his head. He said, frankly, our parents have gotten sort of tough to deal with, and they are not helping and keeping and supporting teachers. And so parents, I'm asking you to be more supportive. The long and the short of it is that we have teachers who are fragile right now. I know parents are fragile. I know kids are fragile, but our teachers are also fragile. And so doing things as you've heard me talk about, we've had parents rip masks off teachers, get in their faces, spit in their faces over what the parent believes should be done. And that's never a good way of handling things. And then it got to the point where the school board meetings in some places got to be very disruptive. They had to have security out there, to the point where now school districts have reached out to the federal government for support and security help. And now the federal government, as some of you may remember from a previous podcast, have said that they're going to start training school boards and school administrators on how to de-escalate parents. And then now we have parents who are mad that the federal government is doing this and interfering. And so we have all of this wanting to look in the negative side of everything instead of taking a breath and practicing gratitude and mindfulness and empathy. We really, really need to relook at some of our practices if they are to the point where they're running off teachers or keeping people from the teaching profession. So what do we do when we don't have teachers in the classroom? Well, of course, we get subs. And you've heard me talk about what some districts are doing. They're getting virtual teachers. But for the first place we always look is subs, right? So this article on substitute teachers never got much respect, but now they're in demand. And so let's talk about being a sub. When Amber McCoy called in sick this fall, there was not a substitute teacher who could step into her fourth grade class. Instead, her students at Kellogg Elementary School were taught by a rotating cast of 7 staff members, including the assistant principal, who switched off every 45 minutes. Every period, they had a different staff member. We're basically relying on every other warm body in the school, said Ms. McCoy. Her current fear is that one day several teachers will be out and with no one to fill. And that could shut the entire school down. And that has happened, by the way, folks. When we have had too many teachers out in different districts, they have had to close school or go to virtual school. In some places, what they'll do is they'll have several classes in the library. And they'll have one big group, and they will be monitored with busy work by school administrators and the librarian and maybe teaching assistants. But this is a crisis. Across the country, some schools are doing exactly that. And many staff members, for example, wanted to take off the Friday before Thanksgiving week. So several districts had to close down that Friday. And, I think it's important that parents be aware of what happens when we have teachers out and have a teacher shortage like this, that the quality of teaching is impacted because the expert's not there. shortage has become so acute that substitute teachers who have historically earned low pay suddenly find themselves on the beneficial side of the supply-demand equation, and in some cases it has led to a rise in shock wages and steady work. Yeah, but again, it's not the expert in the room, right? But as the crunch continues, some schools are lowering their standards for substitute teachers, which was already low enough in some areas. In some schools, districts, what they do is they have 2 or 3 different levels. You have the level of the certified teacher, maybe retired certified, they get paid the highest rate. Then you have college graduate not certified gets the next highest rate. And then you have a high school graduate who can also be a sub teacher, but they don't get paid as much as the other two. So now it says that they're lowering their standards, which were already lower than those for full-time faculty. The situation has become dire enough within the last month that at least in 2 states, Missouri and Oregon, temporarily removed their college degree requirements for would-be hires. The moves have led to concerns by parents and educators and policymakers over the quality of instruction, and that's good to be worried about that. It's also evident that a combination of school shutdowns and remote learning led to significant learning loss for students, which we've all talked about. So the new standards for sub-teachers are a short-term band-aid that shortchanges students, said the National Education Association, which represents millions of education workers across the country. The problem starts with the need for full-time teachers in many school districts. In Arizona, 1,400 teachers left the profession within the first few months of school. And in Florida, the school began with 5,000 teacher vacancies. And low pay, high stress, and challenging working conditions have plagued the profession for years, but the fears over the contracting the virus has created the perfect storm, and school districts are really having to rely on subs because there are many, many teachers who have left the field. Oregon once had 8,290 licensed substitute teachers, but by September 18th of this year, that number had dropped to half. To create a bigger pool, they created a new license. The subs no longer need to pass several tests or have a bachelor's degree. They simply need to be 18 years old, sponsored by a particular district or charter school, and have a good moral character with mental and physical health necessary to teach. 18. How many of us have an 18-year-old or have had an 18-year-old, and you put him in front of 22 fifth grade kids? Oh my gosh. In the 2 weeks after Oregon passed that measure, more than 180 people applied to work as a sub. But we're just not accepting anybody, she said. They are doing some vetting. But again, Missouri once required 60 college credits, but now they have the equivalent of an associate's degree, which was the equivalent of associate's degree. Now the sub just needs to complete a 20-hour online course in professionalism, diversity, and classroom management. So, folks, have I scared you enough? Have I scared you enough of what our problem is and what we need to do to try to really get better at that? Goodness gracious. So a message here is to show gratitude, right, to our teachers, our current teachers that are in the classroom now, and continue to do that. I had that checklist. I won't read it again. It's, if you want it, you can go to previous podcasts. But there are ways that we can help our teachers feel that we're supportive of them, that we really appreciate the job that they're doing and want to work with them even when they have maybe something that is not positive to share about our child. Maybe our child is not doing homework or not doing schoolwork or something. And so we need to be able to listen to that and help with that, as opposed to being angry or critical of the teacher. And speaking of gratitude, last week I had a gratitude exercise around savoring, and I had promised that I would do each next 2 Sundays another gratitude exercise. And I hope that even if you don't do the exercises, that you listen to the rationale of why those doing gratitude is important and showing gratitude, because you get as much back. And teaching our kids to be grateful also starts modeling that for them so that they become good at that as adults, right? So here's the second activity, and that is experiencing awe. Awe is described as the emotion that arises in response to experiences that we perceive to be strikingly vast and changes the way that we understand the world. Evoking a sense of awe expands people's perception of time, reduces feelings of impatience, increases willingness to volunteer time to help other people, leads to a stronger preference for experiences over material products, and increases satisfaction. They conclude that this study conclude that experiences of awe bring people into the present moment, and being in the present moment underlies awe's capacity to adjust time perception, influence decisions, and make life more satisfying than it would be otherwise. And who doesn't need that, right? This tool was designed to help tap into the experience of awe. You'll be asked to recall a time when you experienced awe and write about this experience in detail. And then, as an optional next step, keep a diary about their awe experiences. So the goal of this tool is to help evoke and savor the feeling of awe. So you will, you can create an awe diary and use, again, just like the savoring activity where they didn't ask you to savor those big giant moments, your children's births, your marriage. Those are obvious ones, but those aren't the ones that are going to actually change you over time. The ones that the savoring was the savoring of an experience that you do daily, like the drinking that first sip of coffee. This awe is the same. Matter of fact, you could be walking down the road, and I'll give you some of my awe moments just today. Looking outside, I'm at the lake house, and I can look out, and I'm seeing carpets of gold. And it's just awe-inspiring because I'm used to seeing green grass, right? But now, almost overnight, with the strong breezes that we've had lately, we have almost the whole yards and everyone's yards covered with gold leaves. And it's like walking on gold. And it was breathtaking. And so writing about that and how it made me feel, and if we don't take the time to do that, we can't feel gratitude. And so I feel gratitude for fall. I'm not a winter lover. I will admit to that, although I do find my moments that I can savor and have awe in winter. But, and I'll give you an example of one. During the February ice storm, the house looked beautiful, covered in snow and the ice dripping from the trees. It was a beautiful moment. Cold, but just looking at it with the light shining from the house and just really, wow. And so I like to remember those. I take lots of pictures. I'm a big sunset picture taker. It is not unusual for 2 or 3 times a week for me to go and drive to the spot. We take the ATV, we drive down to, a mile down the road to the public landing pier where we know the sunset is. And especially if it's cloudy, the best sunsets have nice clouds out there where the sun bounces off and different colors reflect. And so that's how I fill my soul, especially right now. You all know we had a recent death, and I'm a little emotionally bankrupt and I need refilling. And so that's a way for me to refill my social emotional heart, is to take these moments and enjoy company, enjoy the milder weather, enjoy the leaves, enjoy the sunsets. And I hope that you all will take the time to do that. and help your kids learn how to do that so that we can all refill our social emotional hearts and any damage and holes that have been done to it because of personal events or COVID and so forth, so that we can be nicer to each other and turn this negativity around. Well, everyone, it looks like my time is more than up today, but thank you everyone for being on. Again, take a minute to show gratitude, not only this week for Thanksgiving, but every day. Find a little something to savor and awe. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week and a great Thanksgiving.